Okay, I have started the recording. Let me share my screen with you guys. Okay, can you guys see the screen, the terminal?
Yes, sir.
Chana, good. So we'll start where we had left off in the last class. And if you guys remember, we were discussing how to distribute or divide the code of our program or single program into multiple files, and then how we can, when compiling those files, we can compile these multiple files together to then produce one single executable, the exe file, which we can run. Okay, so the idea was that you can distribute the code in multiple files, because in larger programs your codes can become very big, in the sense that the number of lines of codes, they can reach hundreds of thousands of millions of lines. Okay, so managing such huge amount of codes in one file is very cumbersome and is very error prone. Okay, it's very difficult, and you will make mistakes a lot. So the idea here is that if you divide the code in multiple files, then first of all it will be easy to maintain, and secondly, when you will be editing code or making changes, you will be editing only one file. Okay, so that file would contain only a small portion of your overall program code. Okay, if you make a mistake, or by mistake if you delete everything, whatever happens, only that small portion of code will be affected. Okay, so this is the idea behind division. Why we do division? The idea basically is to manage large code bases with many lines of code. And how do we divide the code? Basically, here we put code that is related to each other, or that is concerns only one part of the program, or code that concerns the same part of the program, or code that is doing same types of things. We put it in one file. Okay? And codes that are completely different, that are doing completely different things, we divide them into different files. Okay, so there is a logical reasoning to how we divide the code. Code that is similar or doing same kind of thing, operating on same kind of data, we put it in one file combined, and codes that are doing totally different things, we put them into separate files. Okay. Let me see if there are any comments. Kindly please don't talk about the assignment in the class. Any question regarding what I've just said or what we have studied in the last two classes? How to divide our code? No questions? Okay, so if there are no questions, then let us see. Okay, so last time there was a question about why sometimes we put, when we do include, why do sometimes we put this angle brackets, this less than greater than sign, as is being done in line number 1. Oops. And why do sometimes we put these double quotes when we are including files or when we are using hash include? Okay, so the double quotes, as you can see on line number 5, we are including a file multi2.h and we are using double quotes. Okay, and line number 1 is including iostream, so it is using angle brackets. So the answer to this question is related to where the file is located, the file that we are trying to include, where is it located? Okay. If the file is provided by the C++ library or C++ language, then usually these files are located at specific locations on the computer. When you install C++ or C++ compiler, it will basically put all these header files that are part of the C++ language or that come with the C++ language at special locations, okay, on your computer. So if the files that you are including are in that special location, then we use these angle brackets. Okay. So the angle brackets basically tell the compiler that you go to that special location and search for that file in that special location. Okay. So with system files, we use angle brackets. If we are including files that are not provided by the system, not provided by C++ language, then it is we who have to specify the path of to tell the compiler where that file is located. Okay, if that file is located in some location that is other than those special locations, then we use these double quotes. Okay, so this multi2.h file, it is not located in any special location. It is located in our current directory. So that's why we use these double quotes to tell the compiler where to look for these included files. Okay, so these are just two ways of telling the compiler where to look for the file that we are including. Angle brackets tell the compiler to go and look for that file in the special locations specified by the C++ language or compiler. And double quotes basically tell the compiler that look for this particular file in the location that I am telling you, the programmer. Okay, so by default, it will look in the current directory. If the file is not in the current directory, then we have to specify the path here where to go and look for this particular file. Okay, so locations, when I say special locations in our computers are represented as locations on the hard disk, and they are specified as paths. Okay, so every location will have a path. Okay, paths are like in Windows, the paths for files are like C/users/ whatever, for example, Taj/documents. Okay, so these are paths which tell you different locations on the hard disk. Okay, so we can specify paths to tell the compiler where to go and look for any file that we are including. So there are some paths that are specified by the C++ language, and if we use angle brackets, then the compiler will go and look for these files in those special paths specified by the C++ compiler. Okay, so all files that are provided by the system, C++ system, they are located in those special paths. Any other file that we want to include, for example, our own header files, then we have to specify the path, and we do it by using double quotes. Okay, is it clear the difference between angle brackets and double quotes when we use #include? Current directory is basically where this file is located. So this file is multi1.cpp. So current directory for this file, the current directory is the directory or the folder in which this file is located. Okay, so if I go, for example, here, so this is multi1.cpp. It is located here, and if I this pwd like print working directory, so for multi1.cpp, the current directory is this path, home taj cs103 codes. Okay, so current directory is basically the directory in which this file is located. So if I open this file multi1.cpp, it is telling this on line number 5, it is telling the compiler to look for this multi2.h file in the current directory, which means in the directory in which this file multi1.cpp is located. Okay, so if we go out and we do this file here in this directory, I have this multi1.cpp, and in the same directory I have multi2.h. Okay, so in multi1.cpp, when we use double quotes, we are telling the compiler to look for multi2.h in the same directory in which this multi1.cpp file is located. Because when we are compiling multi1.cpp, we are in its directory. Same directory is equal to same folder. I don't understand, but directory and folder are the same thing, okay? The word directory and the word folder mean the same thing. Okay, is it clear? The difference when to use angle brackets and when to use these double quotes. Can we create a folder of header files in the current directory? Yes, you can. Let me do it for you. And before that, there was a question. Sir, can you explain this on dev C++? I don't have dev C++ installed on my computer, so I'm afraid it won't be possible for me now to do it. But I think you can Google it. It's like not very, I mean, you can Google it. So let me to create a subfolder for .h file. So in this, let us create this directory. Okay, so now we have created this directory called headers. Okay, so now let me basically copy this file multi2.h into this folder headers. So if I go to headers, there's only one file multi2.h, okay? And this headers directory is in this folder codes, okay, and our multi1.cpp, it is in again in this directory codes. So if I open this multi1.cpp, now we want it to include this file called multi2.h, but this time we do not want it to include the multi2.h which is in the current directory. We want it to include multi2.h which is in a subfolder of the current directory called headers. Okay? So we will tell is headers slash multi2.h. Okay, so it will basically go look for the folder headers in the current directory, and inside the folder headers it would try to look for this file multi2.h. So let me compile this again. multi1.cpp and multi2.cpp. Okay, you see it got compiled. So this time we included multi 2.h, not from the current directory, but from this headers folder. And inside the headers folder, we have multi2.h, which we have included. So you can give any path that where your file is located. Okay. So paths are slightly different on Windows and Linux. I am on Linux, so these slashes, they are like forward slashes in Linux, and I think they are backward slashes in Windows when we are specifying paths. Yes, you have to give it a path. You have to guide the compiler to the location where that file is located. Okay. So if they are like in headers 1, there is another folder called headers 2, and your file is actually inside that second folder, headers 2, then you have to give the whole path starting from the current directory where that header file is located. Okay, it is your job to guide the compiler to the place or location where that file, where it can find that file. Can we just do it manually, like copy and paste the path? Like in the code? Yeah, you can copy. Yeah, I'm typing it. You can copy paste the path. No problem. It should be correct path as long as the compiler can go and find that file. It's okay. Okay, on Windows and Linux, I think if there are spaces in your path, then you have to use double quotes or something like that around that folder name which is containing spaces. But if there are no spaces in the path, then you can just paste it as it is. Is it clear? How do we specify paths? Include when we want to include header files. For system-defined header files, we don't need to specify the path because the compiler already knows those specific locations where it can find those files. Okay, so we just tell the compiler to go and look at that path using angle brackets. And if we have to specify some path of our own, then we use double quotes, and then we have to specify the path. Okay, is it clear? Okay, I hope it's clear to others also. So there is another, you can go and read up on paths. There are some things that you should know. One thing is, I'm not going to explain it. I'm just going to give the title, words, and you have to Google it yourself. There's something called relative path versus absolute path. Okay, so you guys go and look it up. The way we specified the path starting from the current directory, it's called relative path. We have two quizzes. No, I'm afraid you have to be here for the whole class. Otherwise, it should be in the book, but otherwise you can Google it. It's simple enough concept. So the difference between angle brackets and double quotes is clear, I hope. And if that is clear, then you guys tell me again what is inside a header file. No, what is inside a header file? You are giving me the name of a header file, but no, function is the wrong answer. Prototype of the function is partly correct. Function prototype is correct, but in general, you can say there are declarations. We have studied only declaration for functions, but there are declaration for other things also, which we'll study later in next semester. So in general, the header file will contain declarations. Okay, so declarations are for functions. A declaration is a prototype. Okay, so if this is clear, then you guys tell me where do we find the definitions of functions? Function declarations are in the header file. Where are the definitions of these functions? How does the compiler find the definition for this function? In CPP files. Very good. Okay. So the definitions are in CPP file, and we tell, while compiling, we tell the compiler all the CPP files that are included in this project so that the compiler can find the definition of all the functions. Good. Now this is true for especially for our own functions. For example, here we have multi2.h, which contains the declarations, and multi2.cpp, which contains the definition. Okay. In the original file, their original file has no meaning in this context. Okay, so CPP files contain the definition of functions. So we have multi2.h, which contains the declaration for the Fibonacci function, and multi2.cpp, which contains the definition or the code or the body of the Fibonacci function. Good. Now, what about functions provided by the C++ language? Where are their declarations and where are their definitions? We have discussed where we can find declaration and definition of our own functions, but what about the functions provided by C++ language? Have you guys used any function provided by the language so far? Good. It's in libraries, but where have you guys, just give me an example if you guys have used any function that has been provided by, not that has not been written by you guys, okay, and that has been provided by C++. Okay, power strlen, very good. Okay, so pow is that function. Okay, so Ashit, can you tell us what is the definition for this function, pow? The syntax for this function. Okay, get line also very good. Now before I move further, you guys tell me what kind of information do you need to know if you have to use one of these functions? Do you need to know the definition of the function? If we have to use this function, do we need to know its code, its body, its definition? No, we do not need to know its definition. Okay, we need to know its declaration only. We need to know the information that is in its prototype. We just need to know the function name. We also need to know how many arguments does it have and what are the types of each of its argument. Okay, so that's all the information that is contained in a declaration. So to use a function, we need to know only the information that is in its declaration. Okay, name, number of arguments, and type of each argument. So power function, as you guys said, has two arguments, and the base and the power that you want to raise it to. So let's try to use this power function in our program. So in this main, we'll comment everything else, and we'll try to use this power function. So we'll just see out 2 power 3 is, and we'll try to call power function power. We give it the base and the power, and okay. So we are trying to use this power function. Okay, now let us see what will happen when I compile this program. So I compile this program in the same thing, and let us see what happens. Okay, it says error, power was not declared in the scope. Oops, so there has been a problem. Would you guys tell me what is the problem and how we can solve this problem? First of all, tell me what is the problem. No, we'll come to libraries later, but in terms of what we have studied so far, the way we have been discussing this, tell me in those terms. So function not declared, very good. Okay, so we are calling this function pow, and as we had discussed earlier, that whenever we have to call a function, whenever we have to use a function, we have to first declare it. Okay, now in this file, let me open that file. In this file, nowhere in this file this function pow has been declared until we reach this line number 22. Okay, so if you are using this function in line number 22, then we have to declare this function before line number 22 to introduce it in our program. Okay, to tell our program what is pow. Again, we don't have, either we can declare it or we can use a header file which contains the declaration of this function. Okay, so as you guys said, this function is declared in this cmath, okay, file. So cmath, all the header files that start with C in C++, they are basically telling this an indication that these header files have been inherited from the C language. Okay, they don't belong to C++ as such, but they come from the C language, and C++ also includes them. Okay, so again, cmath is a header file, or sometimes it's also called math.h. So we will basically include cmath to ensure that this pow function declaration has been included. Okay, so cmath contain only the declaration of this function. So let us compile this file again, and as you can see, it has compiled and run successfully. Very good. So the thing is, oops, cmath.h only contain a declaration of this function. We have included the declaration. Okay, so declaration basically is good for compiler. It tells the compiler the syntax of the function, how many arguments does it have, what's the name, what's the type of each argument, etc. So compiler basically verifies that the way we are calling, we have written the correct syntax, the correct number of arguments, and given the correct type of arguments, etc. Okay, all that is good. But to run this function, to execute its code, the compiler, we have our exe file will also need its definition. If we don't have the definition of this code, then our program can't run this function. Right? So CMath file contains the declaration of this function, just like multitude.h contained the declaration of Fibonacci function. So CMath contains the declaration of power function. Where is the definition of this function, the code that we want our exe file to run when we call this function? You guys saw that we compiled this file, this program. It did not give us any error, and when we ran this program, it also ran that function and gave us the correct answer. It means the compiler was able to find the definition of this function and include it in our exe file, and our exe file was then able to execute this function. Okay, so you guys tell me where we can find the code of this function, or where the compiler can find the code of this function in the directory containing CMath. Not exactly. The code for built-in function are found in the definition of the built-in functions are found in. Somebody mentioned it somewhere earlier. Where can you find the code for these built-in functions?
In the directory of compiler.
There are certain directories where these codes are placed in certain files. What are those files called? Yes, those files are called libraries. Okay, so those libraries may be located in the directories of the compiler, or those special paths that we just discussed. But there are special files that contain the code for these functions provided by the language. So these functions, these libraries contain the code or definition for this functions provided by the language, and we call these type of functions, we call them built-in function. Okay, because they come ready-made with the language. So these libraries contain the code for these built-in functions. Now the code for this built-in function, it's in which form? The code in those library files, it's in which form? Is it in text form? Is it source code form? Or is it in binary form? In which form it is? You guys think about it and give me a minute. You guys keep guessing. Paste your guesses here. No, code form is tell me, is it in text form like the source code, or is it in binary form? You guys keep your guess, type your guesses here in chat, and I'll be back in like 30 seconds. Okay, sorry for the interruption. So, okay, so you guys are saying that this can be, some of you are saying source code form, like the text form, the way you write C++, and there was a guess of might be binary. Okay, very good, Muhammad Fareh. You just said linker combines libraries after compilation. Very good. So linker basically, it's a job of linker to link your code with the library functions, and since it is happening after compilation, so at that time your code is also in binary form, and the code in the library of course is already in the binary form. Okay, so since this happens at the linking stage, so all these codes are already in binary form. Okay, so libraries basically come with those header files which are in the text form, and then libraries have those function definitions, okay, in those library files. So those library files are pre-compiled and they are in binary form. Okay, so let me share this picture with you guys. It's a diagram found on Google basically, which is illustrating the whole process, which by the way we have already discussed a few times. But if you guys can see this, can you see this picture in my browser? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So this is basically the compilation process from start to finish. It is for a C compiler, but the same thing is true for C++ compiler. Okay, so we start with this top left side. Okay, so we have our C or C++ code that we have written in our .cpp files and our header files. Okay, so first of all, this code goes to the preprocessor. The preprocessor basically will act on those preprocessor directives, hash include, hash define, hash ifdef, etc. We've studied hash include only, so it will basically include all the stuff that we have asked it to include, including those declarations, prototypes, etc. And then this code generated by the preprocessor, it will be given to the compiler. Okay, so to the right side, you can see this C compiler or C++ compiler. So it will basically check the syntax, verify that you have written correct code, etc. And then it will convert this C code into assembly code. Okay? So the assembly code generated by the compiler, it is given to the assembler, and the assembler will basically convert this assembly code into binary code, which we call object code. Okay? So for every CPP file, an object file will be generated. Okay? And all these object files, they are given to the linker, and if there is anything that you have used from C++ built-in functions, then the linker will also try to link your code with the definitions of those built-in functions which are in these libraries. Okay, so the bottom left you can see the library files, and since this last step, it is happening after compilation, after assembler, so everything given to the linker is in binary form. So these object files also contain binary code, and these library files, they also contain the binary code. So the linker will basically combine all these binaries and generate one final binary program, which will be this executable program. Okay, so this is basically happening when we call power function. The CMath header file only includes a declaration. Okay? That is just to verify that we have called it correctly with the correct syntax. So compiler just verifies the declaration of, or the, I mean, compares our function call to a declaration to verify that we have used the correct syntax. Then later, very later, at the last linking stage, it will basically link the definition or the body of this power function into our executable file. Okay, and that will be done by the linker. At that time, it will be the binary code of this power function which will be copied into our executable file, and then when we run this executable file, our executable file will basically execute that binary program whenever we call this power function. Okay, the binary code of this power function. Is it clear, the whole process? How do we use built-in functions? you have to have the correct include file to have the declaration for that function, and then your compiler has to link with the correct library to copy the binary code of the body of this function into the executable file. Do we have to learn the specific? Yes, you have to know the specific sequence. I mean, you have to know what is happening when you compile your program. Okay, so what's this APO0001? Let me see. Oh, it's not something. I think it's this podcast about history and literature. There you go. If you guys are so interested. All things that are not C++ interest you more than what I'm talking about. So, okay, so if this is clear, then let us see what else, what other, so this, okay, let me share the terminal file with you guys and share this file. Okay, so to use a library, you have to have the correct header file for the declarations of the function that you are going to use, and then you have to link with the correct library file to use the binary code of that function. Okay, so in C++, basically there is a library that comes with the C++ language, and it's called standard library. Okay, standard library. I think it's sometimes called libstd C++. Okay, so this is standard library. So C++ compiler will by default link every program with the C++ standard library. So all these functions, built-in functions that we use are basically contained inside this standard library. So cstdlib is the C standard library, and I think libstd C++ it's called the standard library for C++. In any case, there is a standard library that comes with the language, and it will basically automatically link all your programs to this standard C++ library. So any built-in function that you use, you have to have the correct header file included in your program, and C++ compiler will automatically link your program with the standard library, so it will copy that function's code from the standard library into your executable. Okay, so you don't have to worry about linking with the standard library. But if you want to link your program to some other library, you want some other to use some other library in your program, in that case, you will have to include the header files for that library, and then you will also have to tell the compiler to link with that specific library. Okay? And you basically give the path to that library in your linker options. So in dev C++ also, you will have those linker options in your editor, which you can modify to ask the dev C++ to link your program with any other library. Okay, you don't have to specify the path for the standard library because automatically it is linked to every program. But any library other than the standard library, you have to specify in linker options to tell your compiler to link with that particular library. R scientific calculators program in assembly code. You are talking about those hardware calculators. Yes, they are programmed in assembly language, but I think there are some high-level languages also available for programming those calculators. If you search, I think you will find perhaps Python or some other compilers for those calculators also. But mostly they are programmed in assembly language. Sir, could you please explain this in Dev C++? No, as I said, I don't have Dev C++, but at least you should have the concept of what this whole process is. Okay, the exact where to do it in Dev C++, that is not as important as is at this stage. It is to understand the whole concept, because right now you are not linking with any external libraries other than standard library. Okay, and you don't have to do anything for linking with standard library, because it is automatically linked with your program. Okay, we can see later in some lab next semester how to do it in Dev C++ if we have to use some other library. Okay, but for the moment you have to at least know the whole process, what are the steps involved in turning your code from C++ into binary. Okay, the figure that I showed you. So if this is clear, then let me just give you another example of using another. You guys used those random function in some of your code, right? In some lab, I think you guys generated some random numbers. Did you or did you not? Not yet. Okay. So the C library comes with these functions which help you generate random numbers. Okay, good, Usman. So let me tell you guys how you can generate this random number. So random number, if you want to generate random numbers in your program, then this comes in two steps. First of all, you have to seed the random number algorithm, and then you basically in the second step you will call the rand function to generate a random number. Okay, so you can look up the declarations of these functions, but basically rand function will, every time you call rand function, it will generate return a random number. Okay, so to seed the random algorithm, we call this function srand. Okay, and again you can look up its declaration. The srand function takes one argument, an unsigned integer. You can give it any value. Okay, so usually, okay, let's say I gave it 22. Okay, so this will basically seed the random number algorithm. So random number algorithm has to be given an initial value. We call it a seed. So this is done only once, whole program. Okay, so you do it at the start of the main, and then we can call this rand function. So srand is to seed the random number generator, and rand is then to basically generate random numbers. So I is equal to 0, I less than, let's say 10, I plus plus. Return. Every time now we call rand, it will give us a new random number. So let us compile this function. Oh, srand and rand are not declared. Okay, so we basically forgot to include the declaration. I think it's cstdlib, I think. Here we go. So now I run it, and you see this function rand, it returns a random number basically every time we call it. So the random number is between 0 and some max value. It will generate some random number between that range and return it to us. Okay, so these are again built-in functions that are included in the, basically it's this part of the C library, which is also part of the C++ library. So we can generate random numbers like this. Okay. So how can we, yeah, that's what I was going to ask, that how can we limit the range of the random numbers? So, okay, I don't know whether the screen is stuck or not. Is it stuck for other persons also? Or did you guys saw the code that I wrote? Not stuck. Okay, good. So, Usmanta, it might only be useful. Okay. So again, the next question was how to limit the range. So to limit the range, again, you can use the modulo operator to limit the range. So let's say I want to limit the range from 0 to 10. Okay, so I can basically do modulo 10 to basically whatever number is returned by this rand function, I modulo it by 10, and you guys know that modulo by 10, it would return always a number less than 10. Okay, so whatever number was there, it will be divided by 10, and the remainder will be given to us. Okay, so let us now, you see, we are generating a random number between 0 and not 10 but 9, between 0 and 9, less than 10. So this is how you can use built-in functions. So C++ library basically comes with lots of functions. There are hundreds of functions, 10,000 of functions, I think, maybe, not sure exactly, that are there for you. So you guys should explore what kind of functions are available. You only need to know the syntax, the declaration, and the header file to include. Then you can just call those functions to do anything that is provided by the C library. Wouldn't we have to give it a range? No, there is already a maximum range from 0 till the max number that it can generate. Okay, if you don't like that range, then you can limit it to a lower range by doing modulo. Okay? Yeah, we just did this modulo thing in the program. There was another question, what does it mean shading a random number? So the way this, and there was also an earlier question, what does srand do? Okay, it's the same question, so I'll answer it. Basically, the way this random number generator works, that it starts with some value, okay, and then it will basically generate these random numbers. So somebody also already earlier mentioned that it's not exactly random number, it's a pseudo random number generator. Okay, so that's correct. This algorithm that generates pseudo random numbers, which are like similar to random numbers, but are not really random numbers. And these algos, they work with a certain seed, a starting value. Seed is basically the starting value. So srand will basically give the starting value or the seed to this algorithm, and later on you can call rand to basically generate those pseudo random numbers based on this seed. Okay, so srand we have to do it only once in our program. Okay, at the start of the program in main, we give it any seed, and then we can basically generate random numbers based on that seed. Is it clear? How does srand and rand work? What's not clear? Ashur, can you unmute and speak? No, you can't use rand directly because rand should be called after you have called srand once. You have to basically this random number, the algorithm or the way they work is that they need some starting value. SRAND is to give the starting value, which we call seed, to those random number generator. Okay, so the starting value give it only once, and we use this SRAND function to seed that random number generator. Okay, this starting value is called seed, and then we just use RAND to generate random numbers. Is it clear? The use of what's the difference between SRAND and RAND? Okay, so SRAND is just to give the starting value, and then we call RAND to generate random numbers. And like Usman Tahir pointed out, if you give it the same seed, it will every time it will generate the same random numbers. Okay, and since we want our random numbers to be different, so therefore we basically every time we want to generate random numbers, we want to give it a different seed. Okay, so to give it a different seed, one of the ways is to use this time function. Time function basically returns a value based on the current time, indicating the current time. Okay, so every time the current time will be different, so a time function will return a different value, and we can use that value returned by this time function to seed our random number generator. Okay, so let us do what Usman Tahir has suggested. So instead of giving it 22, I will basically give it time. And time function takes some pointer, we'll give it null at this moment, and I think this needs to include time also. See time. So here we go. This time we are going to generate different random numbers every time, because right now you saw, okay, it was like let me run the old, I have not compiled it yet. Okay, so it is the old executable already. So you guys see it is giving me the same random numbers every time. That's because we are using the same seed. Okay? And the way Usman Tahir suggested, this is one way to give it a different seed every time. So let me compile it. And now if I run it twice, you see it is giving me different random numbers. The sequence of numbers is different, while previously it was the same. This time, since we are using a time function, and time function gives us a different value every time we call it, because the time has changed since we last called it. So therefore, the random number generator starts with a different seed every time, and it gives us different numbers every time. Okay. So time, you can use time function as a method of giving a different seed every time you run this program. Okay, again, time is also a built-in function that we can call. Is it clear how you can use built-in functions that are included in the C++ standard library in your programs? Okay, what about others?
Run this program once again, please.
There it is. Are there alternatives to time function to make pseudo random numbers to give different seeds? Yes, you can like give anything that keeps on changing. You can use that to basically seed your random number generators. Let's say, for example, there is the amount of you. Let's say, assume, I don't know whether they exist or not, but let's assume there is a function that gives you basically the amount of RAM that is being consumed currently in your system. Okay, so every time you call that function, there is a chance that the amount of RAM being consumed will be different. Okay? So you can use that function to seed your random number generator. So basically you can use anything that keeps on changing, fluctuating, to seed your random number generator. Okay, and this is basically only one function that generates random numbers that is included in the C++ standard library. You can have other libraries that may have other methods, other functions of generating random numbers. Okay, so using built-in functions in C++, do you guys now know how to use these functions? Wait a minute, I'll just announce one more thing after I get an answer to this question, that is it clear or not? Is it clear how to use built-in functions in C++ in your program? You have to know the declaration, how to call that function, and then you just include the proper header file and call that function in your program appropriately. Okay, good. So, okay, so we are a little short on our quizzes. So next week we will have quizzes on MS Teams. Okay, it will be MCQ style quizzes, simple questions about C++, syntax, code, how it works, and there'll be like 3 to 4 options given for every question, and you will just have to choose the correct option for every question. There'll be very small quizzes, like 10 questions per quiz, and you will get about 1 minute per question to answer. Is it good? Theoretical or code based, but it will be like simple questions. If anybody has been practicing writing codes, it should not be a problem. I mean, if there's a code given, you will be just asked the output of that code. Yeah, there might be questions like that to tell the output. Yes, this is one option. Okay, so I'll send a mail about this, and these quizzes, they will be at the start of the program, not the program, the class. Okay, so it will be like in the first 10 minutes of the class. So please be on time. Okay, so they'll be on MS Teams.
सर कौन सी डेट मंडे
Monday, Tuesday, Thursday.
So we will have 3 quizzes.
Yes. This will also help you prepare for the exam, help you revise. Okay, and they'll be at the start of the class. So next week you will have 3 quizzes at the start of every class. There will be MCQ based quizzes on MS Teams. Okay, so I'll send you guys a mail about this. And now I think people are trying to leave for namaz. I'll send you an email. You guys can mark your attendance here, and see you guys on Monday. I'll stop the recording now.